Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, it is Thursday the 5th, 2 days after Election Day. There is, as I'm recording this, no decision, which is kind of surreal because probably by the time you watch this or listen to it, the outcome will be known. So you're in a different perspective than me. Man, and I will tell you, at this moment, if Trump wins or if Biden wins, it would not surprise me. Neither one would particularly please me, although I've said this many times. I voted for Biden, finally. Not happy about it, but Trump is terrible. Trump is just so fucking awful. And I'm not saying Biden is not, because certainly, yes, you look at his history, crime bill, all this other shit. Fuck Biden, but fuck Trump just a hair more, just like the tiniest bit. But I gotta tell you, the fact that it is so close that a couple days later we don't know definitively what the answer is, and you remember this in contrast to like 2016, where before I went to bed on election day, we knew Hillary lost. This is just like, whoa. So, man, it's just the situation sucks so much. The fact, like I walk around my neighborhood all the time, I see all these Trump signs. I live in Gilbert, Arizona. If you Google it, Andy Biggs, if you know who he is. If you don't know who he is, Google him. But he's a terrible fucker. He is my congressperson, and reelected again, of course. Although I will say this, Joan Green, who I'm not a fan of, came fucking close, and she did come closer this time than last. So it's progress. But Andy Biggs sucks. Gilbert, not my favorite place. Here's actually just a stupid anecdote because this happened right before I recorded this, but obviously everybody's working from home. One of my employees had some stuff that needed to be updated. So we had to send out some test units for UL and regulatory approval, for design approval, and for some people just to validate them and test them. So before they could go out with that, I had a firmware update, and he can totally update them. Anyone can do that. We have a nice app that lets us do that. But if something happened, if something went wrong, I wanted to be able to have them here so we could pull them apart and recover them. It would have sucked, but could do that. Luckily, it didn't happen. But he comes here, and it's material to this that he has. He has two cars. He has an old car, which is kind of it's a piece of shit a little bit. Mine's kind of a piece of shit actually, although it's one of these things. I actually like my car. It's a 2010 Prius. And I used to, before getting this one, I was on kind of a thing where like every 2 years I'd upgrade. And I got to tell you, it's done pretty well. It's definitely not as nice as a new car, but Toyota builds a hell of a car. I don't like the new Priuses, whatever, as much, but total sidetrack. He has an old car, and he has a new car, which he lets his wife drive around in. So he's in his old car, he comes here. And to be fair, his old car, comes to my neighborhood in his old car, and it first pulls out in front of my house, and the sun is beating down on us. So I say, hey, let's go down the street and get in the shade. He does that. We go there, we're talking, we're just kind of like shooting the shit. I'm updating the stuff with my iPhone, making sure everything works. And while we're there, we start hearing this bang, 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 like clanging door. I thought somebody was doing some kind of work on their security door. That's what it sounded like. It was very weird. It was like, what the fuck is that? This is going on for like a minute or two. And then it kind of pauses. And then after a minute, like we start hearing some woman yelling at us indistinctly. Could not understand honestly what she was trying to say. And we're hearing it, but you kind of gather from this. I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, you got an old kind of not great car. You've got a bunch of boxes on top of it. We're talking there. I'm sitting there. Probably looks like not probably an actual drug deal, but probably looks like a Hollywood, like if there was a drug deal in a TV show or a movie, it might look like this. It'd be stupid to do something like that out in the open like this, I think, but you could understand how somebody might think that, but still. Finally, I'm like, pardon me, ma'am, excuse me, what did you say? And like, this goes on for a minute. Finally, do you live in the neighborhood? Do you live here? And I'm like, yeah, this is my employee. We are here preparing some stuff to ship out, and just social distancing. So we're both wearing masks. We're both just standing there, like on the street, like updating some stuff and talking. And she's like so pissed. And to be fair, like sounded mentally disturbed. To be fair. She's yelling at us still, and then you start hearing this thing, which sounded to me, honestly, almost like if you were pretending to call the cops, what it might sound like. But it was very clear she was trying. She's on the phone with somebody. Couldn't really hear what she's saying, but sounded like that. And then a couple minutes later, we're sitting there both. Luckily for us, we're melanin challenged, so not likely to get killed for this. Although, with cops, you never fucking know, but the odds are in our favor. But still, she's calling the cops. And the first time, I thought kind of bullshit. A couple minutes later, I hear it again. This time I'm thinking, she's probably actually doing it. Like the first time I think was like a bluff. But either way, either she called him twice or she bluffed him and did it. And we're just sitting there like, this lady's calling the cops. Like you can tell. And I mean, here's a interesting racial disparity thing, because if either one of us was black, probably, first off, probably wouldn't be doing this. And second, probably get the fuck out of there a little bit faster. We're more just thinking like, this is gonna be a pain in the ass, not this is gonna be a summary execution. But finally, I'm trying to wrap things up. Not a fan of cops, despite, not being in like one of the categories of people who they tend to murder. I didn't want to deal with it. So finally he goes, kind of like trying to wrap it up. He goes, I come home, I see a cop car coming down the street, cop SUV rather, and I like, you're just like, I know what this is. I go inside and I'm watching him from inside, and again, white dudes have probably helped. He paused, looking at me, kind of looking at the cop, and the cop just kind of like waved him by. I'm sure that the cop is like, just, which again, like if either one of us was black or just brown or whatever, probably wouldn't have ended this way. But it's still like, like what the fuck, lady? What the fuck? Like a year ago, I was in my backyard, and I can't remember what happened exactly. Something happened. I was back there, didn't have a key, and that was it. I went. I forgot. I got my tires changed, and I lived close enough to a place that I could walk home, and then I was just gonna hang out and walk back. Still like a half-hour walk, but it was like, why not? The weather was decent-ish. Walk home, get back there, and I have my key for my front door, but at the moment, for some reason, I couldn't use it. I didn't have the garage door opener, and the back door, I knew I don't do this anymore, but I used to leave the back door unlocked, and so I was like, okay, well shit, I can just go around the back, and to get around my gate ended up being a little bit of a pain in the ass, and I'm sure I looked a little sketchy, but at the same time, I'm back there. I finally just kind of like jury-rigged something so I could open the gate from the outside, go in. I don't have a latch on the outside or a lock. Annoying, but still. Do that, go in, and I'm inside, I'm working on something, and like 5 minutes later, and I was like, holy shit. And I kind of knew what was coming. Like I come to my front door and there's a fucking cop out there. And I mean, this is a different story too, is the crazy thing. Some neighbor saw me and called the cops. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think I look that sketchy. Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't, like, I'm not somebody who dresses in what people would consider to be a professional manner, but I don't think I look like, I'm robbing the place. Yeah, it's kind of just dumb. And I'm thinking here, like, how much time and money and effort is wasted on this kind of bullshit? And I mean, also, like, again, if our complexion was a little bit different, or the situation was a little different, you might not just have the cops like annoying you, you might have the cops like doing some serious bad shit or killing somebody. I don't understand why you would call them. I just don't. I really, at least the one seeing me doing some weird sketchy shit in the backyard, I get, okay, maybe you think I'm helping somebody because I don't know who lives there and there's this guy going in through the gate. Yeah, it seems a little weird. That one is fair-ish. Still don't like it, but I can get it. This lady though, I mean, come on, what the fuck, lady? So anyway, I had no intention of talking about that, but it's like, just so dumb. So fucking dumb. And if you're watching this or listening to this, probably, maybe don't, if you're thinking about doing that kind of thing. Pretty much don't. I honestly can't imagine a scenario where I would call the cops on pretty much anyone for anything. It seems like too much of a risk, honestly, at this point. And even if you're trying to help somebody, you're like, oh, somebody's stranded in their car. I don't think I'd call the cops. I'd call somebody else. I don't know. I mean, shit, if there was a crime going down, I don't know that I would call the cops because, I think it's almost worse than the criminals. And I don't think I'm exaggerating there, But anyway, that being said, roll back. We're here. It is, again, 2 days after Election Day. Don't know what the outcome is. I hope Biden won, although neither one is great. And it just, I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing already, like, first off, I see people just assuming that Biden won, which again hasn't been decided. And I fucking hope it goes that way because, I mean, just to have, like, walking around my neighborhood seeing all these Trump people, I would have fucking loved to just have this, like, decisive blowout victory. And it's like, you guys, fuck you guys. You could just crawl back under your fucking holes. That's what you'd like to see, right? You could kind of, I mean, I don't think in 2016 you could really claim you didn't know, but you can kind of understand somebody who might not have, I guess, maybe. But now there's no excuse, right? And a lot of people voted on both sides this time, but holy shit, over 67 million Americans voted for this motherfucker this time. It's probably over 68 by now. I've been watching the count to minute, but it's probably about there. And you just think, like, I mean, it was bad enough in 2016 when I saw, like, I don't even remember what it ended up being, but Hillary won the popular vote, but I'm looking like, he's not that far behind. And that means this many people, this many Americans are just fucked in the head assholes. And I have to say, like, I do not think you could be a good person and vote for Trump. I know people who have a relative who they think is a good person, who does that. I know, I'm not gonna mention his name, but I know somebody who does like a nationally, like a serious radio show, and his mother, well, now ex-mother-in-law, who he insists is a good person, voted for Trump. And it's like, I'm sorry, you don't get to be a good person and vote for the asshole. And you don't get to say like, oh well, I'm not a just because the racists are for him doesn't mean that everybody who's for him is a racist. It's like, yeah, but if you're for him, then the best case scenario, even if you're doing the whole reductio ad infanticidem thing where it's like, oh, we have to do anything we can to save the babies, which is bullshit because they don't give a fuck about kids when they're actually born. They sure as fuck don't do anything about it. But even if you bought into that stuff, he's a terrible fucking person. He's always been a terrible person. It's not like some kind of mystery. It's not something that you can't see. It's not some occult thing where you're like, oh, who could possibly have guessed? But 2016, you're like, okay, maybe you thought Hillary she had it in the bag or whatever. 2020, you know better. You have no excuse. If you didn't vote, or you voted for him especially, I wouldn't shame somebody who voted for a third party. But I would say, and I even kind of understand if you didn't vote at all, kind of, although, pretty bad. But voting for Trump specifically, I think it's like an unforgivable offense. I think it's like, and I'm not saying, okay, there's pretty much nothing that is absolutely irredeemable, like even cold-blooded murder. I was in San Francisco a couple years ago, and I was taking the, I don't know what they call it, the train, the sort of like the metro, whatever it's called, the rail. And a guy, super friendly guy, helps me out, and he was explaining to me he lived in Bakersfield, and just like, not that long ago, got out of prison. He was in prison for, I think like 30 plus years from the 80s. And he was there because he flat out murdered somebody, which he admitted to. He was in a gang, and he's explaining to me, we talked for like a half hour while we're on the ride. He's explaining to me, well, there's this guy, and and it was very matter of fact, but it was like, holy shit. And he's also explaining, like, I regret it, I wouldn't have. And he seemed like he genuinely changed. I mean, and all of this, but something like that, horrible. There's almost nothing you could do that is worse in terms of an offense. But if you spend your whole life like trying to work for redemption, maybe, I think voting for Trump is right up there. If you did it, I immediately don't think you're a good person. I think you, or at the very least, you're okay with somebody who's not a good person running things. Which I think makes you not a good person. I'm sorry, but I do. And if you did that, I mean, aside from just the fuck you, if you want to spend the rest of your life trying to make up for it, then maybe we'll give you, like, okay, end of the road. You did something awful a long time ago, but we kind of understand you've led a good life since then. Short of that, though, fuck that. I do not accept it as, it's just not a good thing. It's not a decent thing. It's not something that a decent person would do. And I do try always to distinguish between the person being good and their deeds being good, like, and I try to like imply or like, separate this out where it's not that this is a bad person, it's just a person who did a bad thing. I've gotten a little more lax with that recently though. I mean, like the Trump people, and especially again, walking around my neighborhood, seeing these people, I kind of think, some of you are kind of bad people. It's not just that you did a bad thing. And again, if you want to really redeem yourself and change and all this, I'm not welcoming you into the fold immediately, but come do your shit, try to make up for it, and spend the rest of your fucking natural life trying to make up for it. That's the only path that you have. It's just fucking horrible. And I mean, also, like, man, I gotta say, I'm just thinking about like how awful this guy is. And again, also, I'm no fan of Biden. I think Biden is a piece of shit. It bugs the shit out of me that like the idea of him winning sucks ass. Just like Trump, actually, I don't think either one of them deserves to be the president, and it pisses me off. I'm not a huge Hillary fan, but I think you could claim that she fucking earned it. She did the work, more or less. I mean, she may have not done all the campaigning she should have, but she definitely did the homework, and she did a lot of stuff that should have, you know, yeah, but Biden, he's just like not fucking doing anything. He's got people doing all of the stuff for him. And I mean, granted, okay, there's a pandemic, you get a little bit of a pass, but he's got Bernie. Bernie's out there very often, like doing these rallies for him, and you're like, come on, Bernie, you've done enough. Don't put yourself at risk during a fucking pandemic for this guy. And then now, again, like, it's not clinched for Biden. He could easily lose still. And there are fucking Democrats who are out there like shitting on Bernie. And, I mean, no matter what, predictably they're going to do it. But he's just like, it just drives me insane. So anyway, this is just kind of capturing a moment of angst and frustration, both with the lady over there and with this whole situation. Gonna get back to work, so not gonna drag this one out too much longer. We'll have a new one pretty soon. I will say, I mean, this is gonna be a thing, but I'm doing my first night flight, which is also like a flight around the city to several different airports in a couple days, and early next week. And it's just shocking to me, like, it's crazy how much focus it requires and how much, like, you're just, during this training, really at sort of saturation level, and much more so than anything else that I ever do. The only thing I would liken it to is actually like when I go climbing. While you're climbing, unless you're climbing something that's super, super below your level, if you're climbing anywhere near your level, while you're doing it, at least for me, I'm laser focused and in the moment. Yoga, I love. Haven't done it very much recently, but I love it a lot. While you're doing it, especially the kind that I do, you can't physically not be just in the moment. It just like your brain and your body won't allow you to be. Flying is kind of like that. And I mean, part of it is also, I do think like I'm new, so you start learning stuff, you start getting things automated, and you get more comfortable. And then more and more, it's less of that. But I think still, especially when you're in like busy airspaces or things like this, it's a lot to focus on. And like this morning I did, so they have a hood that you use to simulate IFR flight. So in this case, or IMC, instrument meteorological conditions. So like, you fly into a cloud, you can't see anything. You can just see the cockpit instruments. And so I'm there, I'm looking at them, and the thing that is a little bit scary, I mean, I've got my instructor there, but I'm like focusing on something. And today I was working on navigation. So they have a directional radio, essentially. It's like it's basically a antenna, and I think the old ones actually had something that like spun around and transmitted a different, I guess it's basically like two frequencies. I'm not sure if they're out of phase or if they have a beat or whatever, but they basically somehow, because of, whether it's a phase lock or a beat lock or whatever, at 0 degrees, they're like in phase. And then the phase shift, or whatever it is, I'm using phase shift as a stand-in, but whatever it is that is like this, is equivalent to the radial angle. So you have this like basically 360 degree thing, and you can tell if you're on a particular radial from there just by tuning the radio and kind of setting stuff up. And it's kind of amazing to me, actually. Like I can think of so many ways to do this kind of stuff with modern technology, but without computers and stuff that we have, like digital stuff, I don't think I would have I mean, I guess if I was in the situation, maybe I would have come up with it, but it, I admire the people back in the day when they came up with this shit. Now, I guess basically they don't have the thing rotating anymore so much. They just have like a phased array that's, like basically doing the same thing, but electronically. But still, super kind of cool. But I'm focusing on that, I'm learning it. So while you're learning something, you're like really focusing on it. And the next thing I know, the instructor's like, you look at your attitude, and you're, like, I'm pitched 30 degrees, and I was climbing, and it's like, just feels like you're sitting there like straight and level. I look over and I'm like, holy shit. And there are a bunch of moments like this that I have while I'm flying. And I think the more of these that I get, the better. But it just really makes you aware. If you focus here too long, you totally lose sight of everything else. And I'm a pretty good person in like personal and professional life at both kind of balancing focus on the details and then kind of the big picture stuff. But flying, so far, I'm really not there yet. I do think, and I can kind of feel like this is a new thing for me. I've not done it before. So it was like a lot of extra attention, a lot of cognitive load. But, eventually that'll get automated. I'll just kind of like not even really, it'll be more like I'm driving a car. And, I remember when I first started driving, mid-20s, start driving, and like it was so much work and so much effort and thought to just like look around, pay attention to the speed, pay attention to what's going on, all this stuff. There are a hell of a lot less things going on in a car than in a plane, but that was so much load. And now I'm in the car and I just feel like, I mean, obviously it's all like automated and sort of below the conscious level, but I'm aware, oh, there's a car right over here. And, there's a stop sign coming up, or there's, the situational awareness that I have now relative to then, and the amount of effort it takes to have a much clearer sort of synthetic picture of the universe versus when I started, it was like, I had no picture and a shit ton of effort. Now it's like, I have a decent model of the world, not perfect, but decent. And very little effort is required for that most of the time, unless there's something that's, like something big is happening and you have to deal with it. But flying, holy shit. Yeah, it's so different. And I mean, it is kind of more of the same, but it's, much more. It's also, I guess it kind of shows you how much you just focus on something for a little too long, and a little too long is not that long, and you lose sight of what's going on over here. So what you have to do is kind of like bounce your eyes around like you're watching a ping pong game, according to, not my instructor, but the guy that did my check ride a little while back. You just have to be like thinking about stuff. Makes a big difference. So anyway, with that, actually getting back to work now. Thank you for watching or listening, and fucking hope this election goes well, and I fucking hope in the future, if you're watching this or listening to it, we do everything we can to work on either approval voting or first past the post, approval voting or ranked choice voting to get rid of first past the post. I'm a big approval voting fan, but either that or the ranked choice, it's better than what we have. And also like all of these other things that, basically keep us from being in this situation again where like I don't want to have to vote for another Joe Biden, and I don't want to have to be like, have a fucking Trump gun up to my head. I mean, imagine the freedom you would have if you didn't have that kind of situation. It's like, I can't tell you how much it sucks to have the Trump gun up to your head. And then I know people who say, Biden's as bad as Trump. Yeah, in the long run, maybe. Like, neither one's going to do enough for climate change. Biden, crime bill, all this, ruined a lot of people's lives. In the long run, I'm not saying it's an equal thing, but it's much more of a wash. But in the short run, when you look at just Betsy DeVos or, you know, Ajit Pai, and you just go through the list, any of the DeJoy, any of his fucking appointees, they're all so awful. And yeah, Biden's appointees won't be great. They'll be like corporatists, and you know, now they're going to be a lot of fucking Project Lincoln Republican assholes. Sure, like motherfucker. But they'll suck, but they'll be better than Trump's, which is a crazy thing because Trump's are so terrible. You know, it doesn't take that much to be better than those. So, anyway, with that, serenity now. Please let this election come out well. Not that either outcome really makes me happy, but I don't want Trump to be, I don't want him to fucking win. I don't. I can't stand this shit. And I would love to have just a little kick to the nuts to the MAGA people. Because I say this a lot. It is good to know that there are cockroaches in the kitchen. You know, you don't want to have cockroaches in the kitchen, but you never see them because whenever you're there, they scatter and they're gone. You want to see them, kind of, but you also want to address them and get them the fuck out of there. You don't want to have cockroaches in the kitchen and just have it be this lingering, perpetual thing, which is where we are now. So, you know, anyway, thanks again, and Zaijian.